Who is this?
Dr. Marcia Fieldstone of Network America, and you are on the air.
You called a radio station?
An affair to remember made you cry on a couch somewhere. Now, fast forward to 1993, when Nora Ephron took that exact emotional manipulation and weaponized it into a romantic comedy that convinced millions of people that stalking someone across state lines was actually really sweet. A widowed architect falls for a journalist who heard him on the radio, his son playing matchmaker through talk radio, and an entire nation rooting for two people who don't even meet until the final 2 minutes. This was Sleepless in Seattle. The movie that premiered June 25th, 1993, took the standard boy meets girl formula, separated them for 118 minutes, and somehow convinced audiences that watching two people pine for each other from opposite coasts was the height of romance. Tom Hanks cried about his dead wife, Meg Ryan stalked him with frightening dedication, and America ate it up with a spoon made of pure feelings. Today we're diving into 15 weird facts about the movie that turned the Empire State Building into a pilgrimage site and made tiramisu the most confusing dessert in America. Now, before we get started, be sure to like and subscribe because it really does help this channel. Now, let's rock with number 15. 15. Every major studio rejected the script as completely unfilmable. Before Sleepless in Seattle became a $227 million box office phenomenon and one of the most beloved romantic comedies ever made, it was a script nobody wanted to touch. Jeff Arch wrote a romantic comedy where the two leads don't meet until the final scene. Not the final act, the final scene. For 2 hours, Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan would be in completely different cities, never speaking to each other, building a love story through parallel storylines and one meddling 8-year-old. Every major studio read it and said absolutely not. According to multiple sources, they were deterred by the idea that the main couple does not meet for nearly the entire film. It violated every basic rule of romantic comedy structure. How do you build chemistry between actors who never share the screen? How do you make audiences root for a relationship that doesn't exist? The studios called it unfilmable, impossible.
And who's this?
Howard.
Oh, Howard. Hello, Howard.
A guaranteed flop. TriStar Pictures finally took a chance on it, brought in Nora Ephron to rewrite and direct, and the movie became a massive cultural phenomenon. It grossed over $227 million worldwide, earned 2 Academy Award nominations, and launched 1,000 copycat rom-coms trying to recreate its magic. The unfilmable script became a template. The impossible concept became iconic. And every studio executive who passed on it probably spent the next decade kicking themselves every time they saw Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan holding hands on top of the Empire State Building. 14. Kim Basinger turned it down because she thought the premise was ridiculous. Kim Basinger read the script for Sleepless in Seattle and thought the whole thing was absolutely absurd. A woman hears a stranger on the radio, becomes obsessed, hires a private investigator, flies across the country to stalk him, and this is supposed to be romantic. Basinger called the premise ridiculous and passed on the role. And you know what? She wasn't wrong. The premise is completely bonkers. Annie Reed commits what would be classified as felony stalking in several states, all because a widower's voice made her feel something while sitting in traffic listening to talk radio. But Basinger saying no opened the door for Meg Ryan, who wasn't even the first choice. Julia Roberts had already turned it down. Then Basinger, then Michelle Pfeiffer, then Jennifer Jason Leigh, then Jodie Foster. That's 5 major actresses who read this script and thought, nope. Ryan was the 6th choice, and she almost passed 2.
Can I just take a look? There's someone I was supposed to meet. He's probably not there, but if I don't at least look, I'll always wonder about it.
Until Nora Ephron's rewrite convinced her it could work. Here's the kicker. Basinger was right that the premise was ridiculous. The movie just made the ridiculous look romantic. It convinced millions of people that obsessive behavior is actually destiny when you're Meg Ryan and the lighting is soft enough. Basinger went off to make other films while Sleepless in Seattle became a cultural touchstone that people still reference 3 decades later. She correctly identified the movie as absurd, but absurd turned out to be exactly what audiences wanted. 13. Tom Hanks was extremely cranky. on set and got a child actor fired. Tom Hanks, America's nicest guy, was apparently a nightmare during Sleepless in Seattle. Hanks himself later admitted, "I was an extremely cranky actor at that time," coming in and saying, "Why does the kid have so many good lines?" Yeah, Tom Hanks was jealous of an 8-year-old. At the time, Hanks had some hits under his belt and thought he was a big shot whose voice must be heard. He questioned everything, complained constantly, and according to producer accounts, made life difficult for director Nora Ephron, who he found intimidating. But here's where it gets dark. The original child actor cast as Jonah was Nathan Watt, Ephron's first choice. After a few days of shooting, Hanks couldn't stand working with the kid.
I thought she'd be here. I thought she'd come.
We're doing okay, aren't we? I mean, are we okay? Are we all right? I mean, so far, have I done anything really stupid?
No.
One producer recalled, "Tom is being driven crazy, and this boy keeps repeating dialogue off camera when Tom's trying to film a scene, and he's not adding to the film right now." So Nathan Watt got fired, replaced by Ross Malinger, who Ephron didn't even particularly like but remembered from earlier auditions. Watt's entire career derailed because Tom Hanks found him annoying. To Hanks's credit, he's been open about what a pill he was. He later said director Nora Ephron told him something that changed his whole attitude, though he's never revealed exactly what she said. Whatever it was, worked. By the time You've Got Mail rolled around 5 years later, Hanks had zero complaints about working with Ephron again. 12. The iconic ending almost didn't happen because they had to ask a prisoner. The entire climax of Sleepless in Seattle, that magical moment atop the Empire State Building on Valentine's Day, almost never happened. Because the Empire State Building said, "Absolutely not, you can't film here." Producer Gary Foster told Ephron they'd been denied permission. Most directors would panic. Ephron, she just said, "I know somebody." That somebody was a famous publicist who represented Leona Helmsley, the Queen of Mean, who happened to own the Empire State Building and also happened to be in prison at the time for tax evasion. The publicist told Ephron he was visiting Helmsley in a few days and would bring it up. So, the fate of one of cinema's most romantic endings rested on an imprisoned hotel magnate's mood. Helmsley, from behind bars, gave permission. Suddenly, they could film. But even with permission, they couldn't actually shoot the climactic reunion scene on top of the real Empire State Building.
In the street.
Are you Annie?
Yes.
The observation deck wasn't available for the night shoot they needed, so production designer Jeffrey Townsend built a slightly larger replica inside a hangar at Sandpoint Naval Base near Seattle. That's right, Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan were never actually on top of the Empire State Building in that final scene. They were in a decommissioned military hangar in Washington State, pretending. The exterior shots and lobby, real, but that swoony romantic reunion with the New York skyline behind them, completely fake. And you never noticed because Townsend's team built it so well, nobody could tell the difference. 11. They also couldn't film in Seattle until Elizabeth Taylor's ex-husband intervened. Seattle had another problem: no sound stages. The city looked gorgeous on camera, but had zero movie-making infrastructure, which meant production needed to get creative. They found decommissioned hangars at Sandpoint Naval Station that would work perfectly. The Navy kept saying no to their requests. Bureaucracy moved slower than dial-up internet. Once again, Nora Ephron said, "I know somebody." This time, former Virginia Senator John Warner, who'd been married to Elizabeth Taylor and served as Secretary of the Navy. Warner owed Ephron a favor, and apparently it was a big one. One phone call later, the Navy suddenly reversed course and said, "Sure, you can use the hangars." So Sleepless in Seattle's production was rescued twice by Ephron's Rolodex of powerful people who owed her favors.
I know. I used to sit in the cutting room and watch her and just turn to my editor and say, "Isn't she adorable?"
An imprisoned hotel magnate and Elizabeth Taylor's ex-husband. That's not movie making, that's a masterclass in networking. The hangars worked out beautifully. Production set up shop and built their sets, including that replica Empire State Building observation deck. Meanwhile, Seattle locals watched film crews descend on their rainy city during the one time of year it doesn't actually rain. The movie was shot in summer 1992 during a heat wave, which meant poor extras had to wander around in heavy coats and scarves while sweating through their clothes. According to Nora Ephron's DVD commentary, they brought in massive trucks with water tanks and sprinklers just to make Seattle look like Seattle. Nothing says authentic filmmaking like faking rain in the Pacific Northwest. 10. They shipped the same door to 2 different cities for 1 shot. Here's the level of obsessive detail Nora Ephron brought to Sleepless in Seattle. There's a moment early in the film where Annie walks out of a door in Baltimore and the shot match cuts to Sam walking out of a building in Seattle, visually connecting them across the country. Most directors would just find similar-looking doors in each city. Close enough, right? Nobody's going to notice. Ephron noticed, and she refused to settle. According to production designer Jeffrey Townsend, they didn't find similar doors.
I mean, you can't even turn on the news nowadays without hearing about how some babe thought some guy's butt was cute.
They found one perfect door, then literally shipped that same door to both Baltimore and Seattle so the shot would match exactly. They installed it at each location, filmed their scenes, then packed it up and sent it to the next city. That's not attention to detail. That's architectural perfectionism elevated to an art form. This is the same production designer who deliberately avoided using the color red for the entire first hour of the movie. Watch carefully, and you'll see Seattle is filmed in blues, grays, and muted tones. Then Sam and Annie first cross paths at the airport. A soccer team in red uniform spills between them, and suddenly red appears everywhere. Red gradually takes over the color palette as the movie progresses, representing the passion building between Sam and Annie even though they never actually speak to each other. Jonah's coat turns red. Annie's outfits feature red. The entire visual language of the film shifts. But sure, it's just a romantic comedy. Nothing that deep. 9. The tiramisu joke broke TriStar Pictures phone lines. There's a scene where Rob Reiner randomly says tiramisu to Tom Hanks, who panics and asks, "What is tiramisu?" Some woman is going to want me to do it to her, and I'm not going to know what it is. Reiner never explains. It's a dessert. The scene moves on.
Tiramisu.
What is tiramisu?
You'll find out.
What is it?
You'll see.
And apparently half of America lost their minds. TriStar Pictures started receiving 25 to 30 phone calls per day from confused moviegoers demanding to know what tiramisu was. Susan Levin, TriStar's executive director of publicity, told the St. Louis Post-Dispatch it started the Monday, right after the film opened. When we tell them it's just food, a lot of the callers don't believe us. Others sound a little disappointed. People thought tiramisu was something sexual. They were calling a movie studio to find out what kind of freaky stuff Meg Ryan might want Tom Hanks to do to her. In 1993, before you could Google everything, if a movie confused you, you apparently just called the studio. TriStar smartly turned the confusion into a marketing campaign. They published Nora Ephron's own tiramisu recipe and sent representatives to Good Morning America to explain what the dessert was. The movie single-handedly popularized tiramisu in American restaurants. Nora Ephron later said on the DVD commentary, "It hardly seems possible there was a time when all of America didn't know what tiramisu was." But that was 1993. The dessert was so unknown that Tom Hanks's character being clueless about it was an entire joke. Now, it's on every Italian restaurant menu in America. You're welcome, Italy. 8. The movie accidentally caused a tiramisu quality crisis. The tiramisu joke didn't just confuse America. It accidentally ruined tiramisu. After Sleepless in Seattle opened, Italian restaurants across the country got slammed with customers demanding this mysterious dessert they'd heard about in the movie. According to the Washington Post, the demand became so overwhelming that restaurants started taking shortcuts just to keep up. Suddenly, tiramisu went from an authentic Italian delicacy to whatever mashup of mascarpone and ladyfingers a panicked kitchen could throw together in 20 minutes. Quality plummeted. The Washington Post reported that several restaurants began cutting corners to meet demand.
Some woman is going to want me to do it to her, and I'm not going to know what it is.
You'll love it.
Oh, this is going to be tough.
And tiramisu began to suffer as a result. Tom Stockley of the Seattle Times wrote that by October 1993, just 4 months after the film's release, virtually every Italian restaurant in the Seattle area featured tiramisu, as did several non-Italian eateries. It became Seattle's hottest dessert, which sounds great until you realize most of these places had never made it before and were learning on the fly. Cookbook author Dory Greenspan told reporters that minutes after the movie opened, every morning, TV show had some cook making tiramisu. The dessert went from obscure to oversaturated in literal days. The ultimate irony? Rob Reiner, whose character created the tiramisu phenomenon with that one mysterious line, later dismissed the dessert as overrated in a 2014 interview with RogerEbert.com. He insisted he would never order it for himself. 7. The movie shot. During a heat wave and had to fake Seattle's rain. Seattle is famous for exactly one thing: rain. 9 months a year, the city is drenched. So naturally, when Sleepless in Seattle filmed there in summer 1992, it didn't rain a single day. Worse, they shot during a heat wave. Director Nora Ephron revealed on the DVD commentary that filming during Seattle's summer meant gorgeous sunshine when they needed stereotypical gloom. David Hyde Pierce even has a line in the movie where he tells Annie that it rains 9 months out of the year in Seattle, which Ephron included specifically because the opposite was happening during production. So they brought in massive trucks equipped with huge water tanks and industrial sprinklers to fake the rain. Extras wandered around in heavy coats and scarves, sweating through their costumes, while production sprayed them with water to create that authentic Seattle drizzle. One houseboat neighbor had an even worse experience. Her bright aqua paint job was causing camera problems, so the production crew repainted her entire houseboat to a more muted color. After filming wrapped, they repainted it again back to the original color. She had to live through 2 complete paint jobs because her house was too colorful for a movie about Seattle. Another neighbor had to swap out summer flower pots for evergreens and Christmas lights because the movie takes place between Christmas and Valentine's Day. And apparently real flowers in August ruin the winter illusion. Seattle locals also got confused by New Year's Eve fireworks exploding over Lake Union on a random Friday night in August. Just normal movie things. 6. The studio forced a song into the movie that Ephron hated. Sleepless in Seattle soundtrack is full of timeless classics from the American Songbook: Jimmy Durante, Nat King Cole, Tammy Wynette. It went to number 1 and sold millions of copies. Nora Ephron personally curated every song to make the movie feel timeless. Then TriStar Pictures demanded she add a contemporary Celine Dion song. The studio delayed the movie's release from April to June 1993, specifically so they could add a Celine Dion and Clive Griffin duet of When I Fall in Love to the soundtrack. Ephron was thoroughly opposed. She hated the idea of a modern pop song destroying the classic vibe she'd worked so hard to create. So Ephron agreed to put the song in the movie, smiled, nodded, and then just didn't do it. When I Fall in Love plays during the credits, technically in the movie, but Ephron made sure it never appeared in the actual film. She chose Jimmy Durante's Make Someone Happy as the closing tune instead. This was kept secret from the studio executive who demanded the Dion song. Ephron basically pulled a bait and switch, and by the time anyone noticed, the movie was already in theaters making money. Ironically, James Cameron did the exact same thing with My Heart Will Go On in Titanic. He hated the song, banned it from the movie proper, and let it play only over the credits. 5. Nora Ephron. Had to tell Meg Ryan. Her husband wasn't funny enough. Before Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan became the faces of Sleepless in Seattle, TriStar Pictures had a completely different power couple in mind. They sent the script to Dennis Quaid and his brand new wife Meg Ryan in 1991 because studio boss Mike Medavoy knew the couple wanted to work together on screen. Meg Ryan loved the idea of starring opposite her actual husband. But when Nora Ephron came aboard to rewrite and direct, she had other ideas. Ephron wanted Ryan for Annie, absolutely, but she wasn't sold on Quaid for Sam. According to producer Gary Foster, Ephron had serious doubts about whether Quaid could nail the humor the role required. So Ephron had to have what she later called a difficult conversation with Ryan, essentially telling the actress that her husband wasn't right for the part and Tom Hanks was. Imagine getting that phone call. Hey Meg, loved working with you on When Harry Met Sally, wrote this role specifically for you, but your husband? Yeah, not funny enough. Click. Ryan initially got pregnant and lost interest in the project entirely, which opened the door for Kim Basinger to circle the role. But after Ephron's rewrite landed, Ryan read it and knew she had to do it, husband or no husband. The irony? Ryan and Quaid's marriage lasted until 2001, outliving the shoot by 8 years, but ultimately ending anyway. And Tom Hanks became Ryan's most famous on-screen partner, appearing with her in 4 films total. Sometimes directors know things about chemistry that spouses don't. 4. The writer was a high school teacher running a taekwondo school. Jeff Arch, the guy who wrote the original screenplay for Sleepless in Seattle, wasn't a Hollywood insider or a professional screenwriter. He was a high school English teacher in a small Virginia town who moonlighted as a taekwondo instructor. By day, he taught teenagers about literature. By night, he ran a martial arts school. And in whatever time was left over, he tried to break into screenwriting. For years, Arch couldn't sell a script. Nothing landed. Every pitch got rejected. He was struggling so hard that when his son was born in 1989, it became a wake-up call. According to interviews, Arch made a declaration that he was going to write 3 movies in 1 year. Sleepless in Seattle was the second one. Think about that trajectory. A high school teacher teaching roundhouse kicks at night writes a romantic comedy about a widower finding love via talk radio, and it becomes one of the biggest box office hits of 1993. The script was sent to producer Gary Foster through Arch's small-time agent. Foster read it on a weekend afternoon and actually finished it, which apparently was rare. Most scripts got 25 pages before he threw them down. Arch's life changed completely. The struggling teacher went from grading papers and teaching martial arts to having his name on a $227 million phenomenon. He co-wrote the screenplay that got nominated for an Academy Award. Sometimes the best romantic comedies come from the least likely places, like a taekwondo school in Virginia. 3. Rita Wilson auditioned for the wrong role and got cast as her husband's sister. Rita Wilson, Tom Hanks' real-life wife, wanted to be in Sleepless in Seattle. She auditioned to play Becky, Annie's wisecracking best friend. That role obviously went to Rosie O'Donnell, who absolutely killed it. But Nora Ephron liked Wilson and offered her a different part, Susie, Sam's sister. The woman who delivers that tearful monologue about an affair to remember that Ephron later said was her favorite scene in the entire movie. So, Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson, married since 1988, played brother and sister, which is slightly weird, but also kind of perfect, because their real-life chemistry translated into believable sibling energy on screen. Wilson has said that Ephron would whisper direction to actors privately, rather than call out notes in front of the whole crew. She'd come over and say little things like, "What if you use the napkin as a blanket on her leg during the crying scene?" The An Affair to Remember monologue worked so well that Ephron let Hanks and Victor Garber, who played Susie's husband, completely improvise their response. What started as maybe 2 lines of dialogue turned into Hanks and Garber fake crying about the dirty dozen, banging on the table in hysterical mockery of Susie's emotions. Ephron revealed in the commentary that the entire Dirty Dozen bit was improvised during the take. They were making fun of the fact she was crying over this romantic movie, and they were crying over a war film. 2. Hanks and Ryan barely spoke and aren't actually friends. Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan have starred in 4 movies together and have chemistry so perfect it defined an entire decade of romantic comedies. Surely they're best friends in real life, right? Nope. Hanks admitted in 2023, "I must say, Meg and I are not real close pals. We see each other every now and again. It's like we don't hang out for coffee. When we pick up, we just pick up where we left off. And it's an effortless thing that I don't think either one of us examines it too much, because if we did, it'd be a problem." Translation: we have professional chemistry, but we don't actually like each other enough to be friends. Ryan echoed this sentiment, saying she and Hanks work well together because they both don't like there to be drama. We're just really there to have fun. This is supposed to be a creative experience, and there's no reason to get heavy. The fact that their on-screen magic required almost 0 off-screen friendship makes their performances even more impressive. They sold one of cinema's greatest love stories, despite spending the entire shoot in different cities, filming separate storylines. In Sleepless in Seattle, they barely share any screen time together. The rest of the movie, they're on opposite coasts, and even behind the scenes, they apparently kept their distance. The lesson? Sometimes the best partnerships are the ones that exist purely in the work, untainted by the complications of actual friendship. 1. The improvised Dirty Dozen scene became Nora Ephron's favorite moment. Nora Ephron spent months writing, rewriting, and perfecting every line of Sleepless in Seattle. She obsessed over the script, curated the soundtrack, and controlled every visual detail. And her favorite scene in the entire movie? The one that was completely improvised on set, Rita Wilson's tearful monologue about an affair to remember was scripted and beautiful. Ephron needed that scene to work, to really land, to justify why Annie becomes obsessed with romantic movies and believes in destiny. But the follow-up moment where Tom Hanks and Victor Garber start fake crying about the Dirty Dozen was pure improvisation. According to Ephron's DVD commentary, what was written as maybe 2 lines of dialogue turned into Hanks and Garber banging on the dining table, working themselves into hysterical tears over a 1967 war movie. They were mocking Wilson's emotional reaction, making fun of the fact that she was crying over a romantic movie while they pretended to cry over soldiers parachuting into a French chateau. The contrast was perfect comedy. Ephron let the cameras roll and watched 2 actors riff off each other until they had created her favorite moment in a film she'd spent years crafting. The irony is almost too perfect. The director, known for controlling every detail, who shipped the same door to 2 cities and delayed the release for a soundtrack song, found her favorite scene in the chaos of improvisation. And there you have it. 15 weird facts about a movie that convinced America that hiring private investigators to track down strangers you heard on the radio is actually totally fine and very romantic. Which facts surprised you the most? Let us know in the comments which fact blew your mind. Be sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into the movies that made us believe in destiny, fate, and the romantic power of well-connected directors who know how to work a Rolodex. And until next time,